After the Ice Age ended, there began a climactic period known as the Holocene. For humans in North America, this shift in climate made the continent more hospitable and provided a greater number of plant food resources. Paleo-Indian peoples began changing their lifeways, which was highly mobile and focused on big game hunting, to moving less throughout the year and eating a broader range of foods, including more plant foods. This change in cultural practices is what archaeologists use to define the Early Archaic period. The Dalton people were the first to undergo this lifestyle change in the Midwestern North American continent. One of the cultural horizons that followed shortly after Dalton was the Theban horizon. What I'm flintknapping here is one of their tools, a Thebes knife. Dovetail Points, while being a tool from the Early Archaic period, are a similar lanceolate style to many earlier Paleo-Indian projectile point styles. Phoebs Points and many other early archaic styles are broader than lanceolate point styles and have notches. While lanceolate points have basal edges drawn to accommodate hafting, notched points accommodate hafting with notches that protected lashings and maximize the amount of cutting edge available on a tool. Phoebs points have diagonal side notches which extend upward into the point. Unexhausted examples of these points have broad blades, pronounced rounded shoulders, and finely worked bases with a distinctive amount of edge dulling. Instead of being resharpened on both faces of an edge, which is called bifacial resharpening, the edges of Thebes points were beveled on a single face, the opposite direction of the other edge. While beveled edges are associated with Thebes points, I do not end up beveling the edges on my piece, leaving it how a freshly made, unresharpened Thebes point would have looked. Thebes points are part of a larger group of point styles including dovetails, also called St. Charles points, Samson points, and Pulaski points. This group of tools belongs to the Theban cultural horizon. This horizon is dated to 9,500 to 9,000 years before present, in the Early Archaic period. Based on their beveled edges, wide blade geometry, and edge wear analysis, Thebes points were used as hafted knives rather than as projectiles. Dovetail points, which are found in the same context as Thebes points, seem to have served as both projectile points and as multi-purpose cutting tools. Dovetails were notched in a similar way to Thebes points, but are narrower and more gracile, which would have lended to better use as hunting tools. As Thebes points were worn down with resharpening, they were sometimes made into hafted scrapers or into narrow awls or drills. Theban horizon peoples used many other tool forms as well. These early Native Americans also made chipped stone adzes like they did when they practiced Dalton cultural ways. Theban horizon people also made end scrapers for working hides into leather and side scrapers for working wood and other materials. Flakes served as expedient cutting tools for a variety of tasks. Anvils and pitted stone hammers were made and used for processing tough plant foods like nuts. Phoebs Points were made by Native American people living in what is now Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and parts of surrounding states. As a result of this large geographic area, Theban horizon people used a broad variety of materials for making these tools. Thebes points were almost exclusively made from raw chert as opposed to heat-treated chert. The material I'm using to make this Thebes point from is raw Carter cave chert. This highly sought after and increasingly rare material occurs in eastern Kentucky. I collected a small amount of Carter cave chert, including this piece, in 2015. This piece of stone that I'm working occurred as a natural slab, making my task of flintknapping a bit more predictable. Other common materials that these points were made from include Burlington chert, Cobden chert, Indiana hornstone, Kentucky hornstone, Dover chert, Fort Payne chert, Hickston quartzite, Flint Ridge flint, Mercer chert, Coshocton chert, and a wide variety of other sources from the geographic area in which Thebes points are found. Unlike many Paleo-Indian peoples, early archaic people seem to have stuck to a geographically bound home range, rather than having roamed great distances. Archaeologists see evidence that these people may have stuck to a yearly round, or at least returned to certain locations multiple times. The term yearly round describes how hunter-gatherers return to the same spots for resources based on their seasonal availability, for the location's suitability as a residential camp, or for other reasons. As a result, as the people go round a year's worth of time, they use the same locations as they did the same time the previous year. Some sites, like hunting camps, will contain artifacts suggesting the preparation of hunting tools and the butchering of animals. Some resource procurement camps may have nut processing tools. Other sites will have artifacts that suggested that people use these camps as residents for long periods of time, or for short periods of time over many years. The Twin Ditch site in Illinois seems to have been such a place, since an abundance of adzes recovered here denote heavy woodworking tasks. These heavy-duty woodworking tasks would not have been done at short-term sites, such as at resource procurement camps or at hunting camps. In total, around 40 adzes were recovered at the Twin Ditch site, which is a greater number than any other formal tool type recovered. Adzes would have been useful for constructing camp structures and for general woodworking, but for also making canoes. Canoes allowed early archaic people to better access marine food resources like fish, and to use rivers as a way to travel. Theban hunter-gatherers exploited more plant food resources than their Paleo-Indian predecessors. The most important of these plant foods were mast nuts like hickory and acorn, while others like hazelnut and walnut were gathered in lesser numbers. Because Theban sites are more than twice as numerous as Dalton sites, some archaeologists think that there is a population increase that would explain this increase in sites. One explanation is by the time that early archaic people were using Theban technology, Holocene environmental conditions made deciduous nut forests widespread, and people were adapted to effectively exploiting this abundant food resource. This increase in food may have allowed more people to survive to adulthood and thus created a population boom. White-tailed deer and fish were two of the most important sources of protein for Theban horizon peoples, but they also hunted birds and small mammals as well.